A subscriber asked me to describe how I curve the world in my game, so I'm going to show the curved world shader in this demo and how it's set up and describe how it works. But the first thing I'm going to show is the geometry, because it needs to be prepared in order for the shader to work properly, otherwise you won't get good results. So I'll zoom in on one of the characters. Yeah, her. So for the characters, you don't really do anything. You just model them as before. Now, the one thing you'll have to do is, when I show you the shader, you will also have to curve the character. It's just that since she's close to the camera, it won't show up. You won't notice anything. But if you don't go through the process of curving the character mesh, she'll be offset from the railroad track, because you'll be curving the railroad track and not the character, so there'll be a bit of an offset and it'll look strange. But if I show the mesh, see, there's just a standard mesh. So obstacles, again, just to show, I haven't done anything to the mesh either. And the reason is I don't really care about showing the curve effect for the obstacles, so you don't have to do anything for that. Now for the trains, I do want the train to show up with the effect of the curved shader. So for that, what I've done, you'll see, is I've chopped the train in two. As you can see, you've got this line running through, and what that'll do is it'll show a reasonable curve along the length of the train. You could, if you wanted to have it more tessellated, you could do that by, I guess, chopping the train more, but it's enough to just chop it in half to get that nice effect. And as you can see, I've also done it to the shadow. But that's all you need to do, just give it a little chop. Because if you don't, what'll happen is I'll try and do I'll try and curve it, but since this is one solid piece, it won't show up in the shader. It'll just do an offset and it won't look nice. And now for the special way that I've set up the mesh for the floor. The floor is one of the things that I really want to show up with the curved shader. So for that, I'll do a selection. I've selected it. Yeah. So as you can see, that's heavily chopped or tessellated, and you really want it to be like that, because as it's sort of like vertex shading or vertex lighting. If you don't have a well tessellated mesh, the lighting won't look proper because there's not enough vertices to light with. And the same with the curved world shader. If you don't have the floor well tessellated, it's not going to curve nicely, because you'll have too few vertices, and so there's not enough for you to work with in order to curve the world. So that should give you an idea of how to set up your floor if you want to use the curved shader. So in the next video, or next section of this video, I should say, I'll show the curved shader, the actual source code, and we'll go through it line by line, and that's what I'll show next. Alright, now I'm going to show the vertex shader that curves the world, or gives that curved world effect, and for that, it's this one. I'll highlight it first, see if it lets me. Yeah. So this is the full shader, and we'll go through it line by line. This is using the metal shading language, so it's not using OpenGL in this version, but it's self-explanatory. There's not much in the way that's different from using an OpenGL shader. But essentially here, I'm projecting the position of your mesh, whatever it is that we're rendering, into a projection space. So it's like it says, it's being projected into normalized device coordinates. So here I would pass, in this MC worldview projection, I pass the concatenated worldview projection matrix and just multiply the mesh position that is passed in by the vertex buffer. So that'll transform your vertex for the mesh into normalized device coordinates. And what that means is that it'll be, since this is using, if it's a OpenGL based coordinate system, it'll transform your vertex into the range of -1 to 1 in both the x, y, and z values. So it'll just put it into the, I get a unit cube, we can say. And now we're going to talk about the, I guess, the meat of the curved shader, which is really, it's just 2 lines, believe it or not. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking that projected position that I just calculated, and then I'm just shifting it, really. That's all I'm doing. And that's what's happening here. So what I'm taking is I'm taking the projected z coordinate, squaring it so you get a simple quadratic curve like y equals x squared. So that's what you're getting here. And then I'm controlling the direction and slope of that curve by passing a curve world parameter here. So this is something you select. And how you select these values, well, you just literally play around until you find something that you think looks nice. So there's no rhyme or reason. Just pick a value that you like. And obviously, the value could be either positive or negative. Based on the direction that you want the world to curve. Later, I'll show a demo that I have of the game where I'm playing around with this value, and you'll see how the world is curved differently based on these input values. But again, you just pick a value that you like. And I'm using the z-coordinate because I want the world to curve. The further away you are from the camera, I want the world to curve more, so I use the z-coordinate, and I squared it because I looked at some other similar shaders, and I like the way that looked. It gave it a nice curve, but again, you can do something else that you like. I also do this after I've projected my coordinate. You could also do this in views, like once you've done, say you've multiplied by the world view matrix, you could also do this there. It's just a matter of personal choice where you want to do this and how you want to do it. I just chose after I've projected my coordinates. So again, I just square the projected z coordinate, then I multiply by a value that I picked to control the slope and direction of the curve, and then I add it to my projected x coordinate to shift it, and that's what's going to show the that's what's going to give you the curve. And I do it both in x and y. So y might have a different value, like you might want to have a different curve and direction for the way that the y coordinate is curved, and so then you might pick a different value. So that's why I'm using a .y here, or you could have the same value, that's up to you. And then I just output that from the shader, as you can see, the sVertexOutput. And then since I don't do anything fancy, I just pass the texture coordinates that were in the vertex that's being inputted for me to process. And yeah, that's pretty much it to curve the world in this game, just these 2 lines. So yeah, it really comes down to how you tessellate your mesh. If you don't set things up properly, you won't get the effects that you want. And so I think you should just look at what I did earlier with how I set up the meshes. So in the next section of the video, I'll just show the world that I've shown before, but this time we'll play around with these curved world parameters to see what the effects are. So that I'll do in the next part of this video. Alright, here I did a special version of the game where I can change those curved world parameters that I was passing in the shader that I showed earlier. So by tapping the screen, I can show you how I control the slope of that curve as well as the direction. So I'll just start making some changes. So there you can see the curve shifting. And like I said, you just play around with the values until you like something. Of course, this is a little bit much, but you can see how it's curving. So I can also do the other way if I want. So have it go in the opposite direction. And this is happening in the x, that x parameter that I showed. So that's what I'm modifying now. So now it's going the other way. So it's up to you what you want to do. So I'll just bring it back. And now I'll do the y version of this. So there it's curving downwards heavily. So let's bring it up. Whoop. So like I said, now it's I guess it's giving you a sort of like a ring type of curve. So those simple lines, 2 lines in the shader, that's all I used to do this. And as you can see, you can get some pretty cool effects just by doing that. And again, you just play around until you get something that you like. So that's pretty much all I have to do or show for this shader. And I hope someone finds it useful. And maybe perhaps you can use it in your own projects. Till next time, thanks and bye.